Good morning and welcome back to Daily in the Word. Many of you may not know it, but besides the daily videos that we do during this COVID-19 crisis, we've always had, at least in the last few years, a daily devotional that is written on our website. You can find that if you just look for Morning Meditations. In that devotional, I've taken some of the writings of Richard Baxter from the 1600s and made them a little more modern and a little more updated. Added a scripture verse, then try to keep it about 130 words, just to keep it short and concise and hopefully powerful. And then I end that usually with what I call a sentence sermon. If you remember the old daily bread style, it's somewhat like that. There's a verse, and then there's the thought for the day, and then there's that one line that's supposed to drive it all home. Underneath that, you'll see that there's also a daily Bible reading. So I encourage you, even after we finish doing these videos, or if we finish doing these videos, that you'll read the daily daily devotional called Morning Meditations on our website. Well, this morning I want to look back at one of those. Back on April 22nd of this year, one of the devotionals, for some reason, just kind of caught my eye, and I really should say caught my heart. I started really thinking about it a lot. And one of the problems I have with those devotionals is trying to keep them very concise to 130 words or more or less. And sometimes that's difficult because, well, sometimes I go a lot further than 130 words. I like to say a lot of things. I read this devotional several times, and then I actually added to it, not on the website, but in my own little book. And I wanted to read you some of the things I added to it because I thought it was very thought-provoking. It starts with a quotation from Ephesians chapter 4, where Paul said this, "Wherefore put away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down on your wrath, neither give place to the devil." And I wanted you to think about that one last line there, neither give place to the devil. Now, this is a part of Paul's letter to the Ephesians, where he's talking about the putting on, putting off principle. There are some things when we get saved that we need to put off or put away, stop doing. But there are also some things we need to put on. And at the end of that list, he says, neither give place to the devil. Be careful because of the devil. Baxter said this about that. Baxter said, understand that the devil suits his temptations to our particular situations and our individual weaknesses. The devil has had thousands of years to become one of the most sly and skillful hunters that ever lived. And trust me, if he sees a weakness in you, that's where he's going to attack. Baxter went on to say, he tempts parents to be cold and unconcerned about the wise education of their children. He tempts children to be disobedient and unthankful to their parents. He tempts husbands to be unloving to their wives. He tempts wives to be passionate and impatient with their husbands. He tempts employers to be demanding and difficult. He tempts employees to be lazy and careless. He tempts pastors to be selfish and self-promoters. He teaches church members to be critical and unforgiving. And take heed, therefore, for once your heart is turned to self, the devil will step in and show you the way to satisfy any and all selfish ends. So whatever your situation, there is a particular weakness in your life in that situation. I'm one of the assistant pastors at Faith Baptist Church, and there are times where the devil tempts me to say, Pastor Monty's not doing it wrong. Here's how he should do it. Well, I'm not the authority. I have to submit to his authority whether I agree with it or not. Now, let me just say, those times are very few and far between, but as humans, we always have some disagreements. Baxter went on to say, therefore beware of selfishness, for it is the poison of all relationships, and it is the devil's finest instrument. I kept thinking that was the end of that devotional, and I kept thinking about that devotional, and I thought, I kept writing, and I added more to it later on. I said this, he tempts the devil, he tempts the fearful to worry and to be anxious. He tempts the foolish to be careless. He tempts the weak to be fearful. He tempts the strong to be reckless. He tempts the critical to be condemning. He tempts the selfish to hoard and stockpile. And he tempts the suspicious to be skeptical. And I suppose I could go on and on and on and on with that list, because we all have our particular weaknesses. And what Baxter's trying to say, and what I'm trying to say is, whatever that weakness is, likely you know it, beware, because that's where he's going to attack first. When I talk about, when I do marriage counseling, a lot of times I deal with couples who are going through struggles. And several years ago, I was asked in a marriage counseling conference, what do you think is the one problem that what do you think is the greatest problem that most marriages have? And I suppose people are kind of expecting me to say something about communication, because that is a great problem in marriages, or finances, because husband and wife sometimes argue about finances, or raising their children. And I think all those are problems in marriage, but I don't think they're the root problems. I think if you boil it all down, the root problems are pride and selfishness. If you think about that, you'll probably have to agree with me. Pride and selfishness are the root of all the problems you have in pretty much every marriage. And so therefore, as a husband and wife, those are the areas you have to be careful. And in whatever situation you're in, there are certain things that are going to be the weakness. If you're in a superior and inferior relationship, you have a boss and you're the employee, then you're going to have a problem with submission. That's just a weakness, and that comes up in that relationship. If you're the boss, then you're going to have a problem with being overbearing, and on the list goes. Because of those weaknesses, that's in those weaknesses, that's where the devil takes advantage. Baxter's devotion calls me to write this at the end of devotion. That one sentence sermon line said this: it's easy to push a man in the direction that he's already leaning. If you're already leaning, that's already your weakness. That's why the devil chooses it. That's where he pushes you. That's where he knocks you over the edge and moves you. Could I end this devotional by reading the warning that Paul gave the Ephesian church in Ephesians chapter 6? He said this in verse 10. Finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take upon you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day, and having done all, stand. Let me encourage you to watch carefully. If you know your weakness, be on guard at that weakness. Because if you're not, the devil will do everything he can do to push you over that edge. I hope you'll join us back again next week on Daily in the Word.